All right, so welcome everyone to another deep dive. Today, we're going to be tackling the Romantic period in music.
Oh, excellent.
It's a big one. We got tons of your questions, and it seems like, well, everyone wants to know more about this era.
Well, it's such a rich period,
Yeah.
and so much happened, right?
Right.
It's more than just the music itself, it's the whole cultural shift, the historical events, like, oh,
Yeah, and that's
what?
what we're going to get into. I mean, we're going beyond just like naming composers and dates here.
Right.
We're diving into how things like, the Industrial Revolution actually changed the sounds composers could even make.
Yeah, it's really fascinating.
It is. And speaking of fascinating, I got to say, some of these questions you guys sent in,
Cool.
like how did composers balance this pull between tradition and like this urge to completely break free
Right.
and program music?
Oh, yeah.
Music telling a story? I mean, come on.
That's one of my favorite things to talk about. It's really wild when you think about it, right?
Yeah.
Like, music can actually paint a picture, tell a story without any words.
Well, let's get into it then. So, maybe to start, can you kind of set the scene for us? Like, how different was the world of the Romantic period from what came before, the classical era?
It was a huge shift. The Enlightenment, with its emphasis on reason and logic and order, it was giving way to this new focus on feelings, on intuition, on the power of the individual.
So kind of like a pendulum swing almost.
Exactly. And you can hear that in the music. It's there in the way composers use harmony, the way they express emotion.
So it's not just like louder and faster.
Oh, no, it's
Yeah.
it's much more than that.
Yeah.
Well, think about the classical period. Balance, clarity, restraint, beautiful.
But controlled?
Yes. But the Romantic period, it's all about unleashing those emotions. Passion, longing, drama, all that. You can really hear it in the music of, say, the later Beethoven.
Yeah.
He was kind of a bridge between those two worlds.
Oh, yeah, I get that. Like he started out all classical, but then,
Then his later works, they just explode with this incredible emotional intensity. He takes those classical forms, the structures, but then he infuses them with this raw, almost desperate emotion.
like he was pushing the boundaries even for himself.
Exactly. And it wasn't just about expressing emotions. The sound itself was changing too.
Right. Like the whole orchestra was getting bigger, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah. And they were experimenting with all these new colors and textures. You had longer, more dramatic melodies, a wider range of dynamics. Like, imagine you're listening to a quiet, introspective piano solo, very delicate.
Uh,
And then suddenly, boom, the whole orchestra bursts in. That kind of dramatic shift, that's pure romantic.
oh, I bet that made audiences sit up and take notice. So what was driving those changes in the music? I mean, why did orchestras suddenly get so big?
Well, part of it was the Industrial Revolution, believe it or not. New technologies led to improvements in instrument making. Like,
Okay.
think about brass instruments. Before, they were pretty limited in what they could do. But then, someone invented the valve system. Oh, right.
Trumpets and horns could suddenly play a much wider range of notes with much more flexibility. So composers had this whole new palette of sounds to work with, and they went wild with it.
It's like someone gave them a box of crayons after only having a pencil. I love that. But speaking of new and old, how did some composers manage to stay connected to tradition while still experimenting and pushing things forward? Like, what about Schumann or Brahms?
Yeah, they're a great example of that. They drew inspiration from the classical masters, but they also brought their own unique voices to the music.
But, like, specifically how?
Well, take Brahms' Symphony Number 1. It follows the traditional four-movement structure that we see in, say, Mozart or Haydn. But the way he folks that structure, it's totally romantic.
So he's using the old blueprint, but
But he's building something entirely new, the emotional weight of the music, the use of these incredibly intense, almost yearning melodies, the driving rhythmic pulse. It all sets it apart. It's like a powerful expression of struggle and eventual triumph.
all within that familiar framework. Exactly. He's balancing tradition and innovation. And then you have another fascinating aspect of the Romantic period,
Oh, yeah.
which is
Nationalism.
Mm.
Think about it. During this time, you had all these countries in Europe trying to define their own identities, right?
Mhm.
And so you get composers like Chopin in Poland or Liszt in Hungary.
And they started incorporating their own, like, folk music.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They used folk melodies, rhythms, scales from their homelands, weaving them into their compositions. It was a way of celebrating their heritage, creating music that felt distinctly, well, Polish or Hungarian or whatever.
Way of saying, hey, this is who we are.
Exactly. And, speaking of defining oneself, didn't the Romantic period also have this whole concept of The artist as hero?
Oh, yeah. Like they were rock stars, almost.
Well, in a way, yeah. The Romantic artist was seen as a visionary, a genius, almost superhuman in their ability to channel emotions, to express the
Feel
inexpressible.
like they were tapping into something bigger than themselves. Yes. And you can see this in figures like Beethoven, right? He was struggling with his deafness, yet still composing these incredible masterpieces. Talk about overcoming adversity. And then you have someone like Wagner with his epic operas, these monumental works of art.
That demanded so much from everyone involved.
Yeah.
It's like they believed that art had this incredible power, that it could change the world.
They did. And speaking of art that could transport you to another world, we got to talk about program music.
Yes, this is the stuff that blows my mind.
But to me,
Music telling a story without any words, right?
exactly. And the Romantic period was all about program music. Think about Berlioz's Symphonie Fantastique. It's this wild hallucinatory ride. It tells the story of an artist's obsession with this woman, and he has all these crazy visions.
Which is Sabbath.
Oh, yeah. And A March to the Scaffold, Berlioz even wrote a whole program, like a little story, that went along with the music.
So you could follow along and be like, oh, that's the guillotine.
Pretty much. And speaking of inspiration, nature played a huge role in Romantic music as well.
Ah, yeah. Nature. It was a big deal for them, wasn't it?
It was. Romantic composers were deeply moved by the beauty and power of nature. Think of Beethoven's Pastoral Symphony, right? It depicts the peace and serenity of the countryside. Or Debussy's music, which often captures these amazing, almost impressionistic images of nature. The sea, the wind.
So, like, it's not just pretty music. It's actually like you're there feeling the wind on your face.
Exactly. They could translate those experiences into sound. And all of these elements we've talked about, the intense emotions, the focus on the individual, the bigger orchestras, program music, nature, it all led to longer, more complex compositions. They needed the space to express all these big ideas.
It makes sense. So from the intimate whispers of a solo piano to the thundering power of a full orchestra, the Romantic period really was a time of like this huge explosion of creativity.
It really was. And its impact is still felt today. Think about film scores, right? They often draw on those big romantic gestures, those soaring melodies, or even in pop music.
Yeah, those yearning emotional ballads.
Mm-hmm.
Totally romantic.
Exactly. So the legacy lives on, and it makes you wonder, doesn't it? How do you think the Romantic period continues to influence the music we hear today? What echoes of that era do you hear in your favorite music? Something to think about.
Definitely something to think about.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the Romantic period. We hope you learned something new or maybe just, you know, rediscovered a love for this amazing era of music.
Absolutely. Thanks for listening.
And keep those questions coming. We'll see you next time for another deep dive.